Fort Collins has changed, and not just a little, a lot. Fort Collins really used to be a hidden gem. Fort Collins was one of those places that people would describe as Colorado's best kept secrets. Having been born and raised here, I remember growing up, Fort Collins really had this small town feel to it. Traffic was light, you could get across town fairly quickly, 5-10 minutes. Now it's closer to 15 to 20. You had 2-lane roads on most roads, and housing was affordable. I remember that most people knew each other, or you would at least recognize around town. It would be very common. I would get stopped in the grocery store or convenience stores often and asked if I was related to one of my siblings or parents, something like that. It was very common to go out and recognize somebody in town or see somebody that you knew, but those days are for the most part over. The word got out about this amazing town with its incredible schools, safe feel, immediate outdoor access to so many great things. People started moving here, and even companies began to relocate here. Companies like Woodward and the U.S. Department of Agriculture actually moved their offices to Fort Collins. And on top of that, the university here, Colorado State University, has grown significantly in recent years. Before we knew it, this kind of local secret of Colorado became the destination. The next thing I've noticed that has changed the most is the population growth and demand. And I think that once the secret was out, population here just boomed. So without making this boring, and hey, real quick, if you have been in Fort Collins a while, I want to know, what's the one change you've noticed the most? Drop in the comments. I really love hearing everybody's perspective. I would love to hear from some locals to see what you think has changed the most in the city. Okay, jumping back into it. Fort Collins has had one of the fastest growth rates in all of Colorado. So in 2000, the population was around 118,000. By 2020, it was roughly 170,000. Today, it's roughly 175,000 and expected to cross over 200,000 in coming years. Fort Collins has this great quality of life, the outdoor culture, trails, lakes, mountains in your backyard, the strong job market in tech, healthcare, renewable energy, and CSU research. In 2020, when COVID hit, the remote worker boom came from everywhere. A lot of people came to Fort Collins because it offered the perfect landing spot for so many people looking for the ultimate work-life balance, without the price tag of Boulder or the hustle bustle of Denver. But with that growth brings change and more people equal more demand and more traffic, more building, more competition for housing, things like that. This leads us to a question: is Fort Collins still affordable? And the short answer is not like it used to be. The long answer is it depends on who you are and what you want. Here's what's changed. The housing prices over the last decade have climbed significantly. A house that was $300,000 in 2015 is now closer to $550,000 or maybe $650,000, depending on neighborhood, condition, age, things like that. We sold it for $325,000, and today it would be closer to $750,000 or maybe $800,000. This increase in price has come from sheer demand. And until recently, we didn't have a ton of new construction. Well, the market here has leveled out over the last couple years because we have been able to build more houses and more communities. We have had such a strong demand that we don't have enough homes. And Fort Collins is pretty protective over our natural and open spaces, which is great for lifestyle and really good for our residents. But it does mean that we can't build endlessly. We have the foothills to the west, and the city essentially ends at I-25. So even with all the new builds and things like that, we are limited into all of the communities and the number of houses that we will eventually have in the city. This is probably one of our greatest growing pains, and one of the biggest differences that I have noticed moving back is how much new construction Fort Collins has had. It really does not even look like the same city anymore, which is great. It grows community, it grows the economy, things like that. But if you have moved away and are thinking about moving back, be prepared for quite the shock. It's a whole different town. In addition to increasing home prices, rent definitely has increased too. The standard 2-bedroom apartment that maybe used to be around $1,100, $1,200 now sits more like $1,800, $2,000, especially in the newer buildings. There are a lot of newer construction apartments. We are seeing more master planned suburban developments in surrounding areas like Timnath, Windsor, Severance, and Wellington. And what this means is that if you are looking for a less expensive area to live just outside of Fort Collins, you can find more space, newer builds, and sometimes better pricing without giving up access to the city. All of these areas have immediate access to Fort Collins, just like many cities across the US. This isn't unique to Fort Collins. I think a lot of other cities in the US have had these big growth spurts and things like that, but comparatively to other cities in Colorado like Denver and maybe Boulder, it really sits right in the middle zone of home prices. If you are curious about what homes are actually going for in different neighborhoods in Fort Collins, comment below and my team will send you a local neighborhood guide so you can see which community fits best for you, your family, and your budget. The next biggest thing I've noticed that has changed is the culture and vibe shift. The culture has definitely changed, and I actually prefer it now compared to how it used to be. Fort Collins definitely used to be known for being very quiet, laid back, outdoorsy, and everyone knows each other with a super strong locals vibe. For the most part, it still is, but now with more tourism and more residents from California, Texas, and the East Coast, this brings more nightlife, more events, more just buzz around the city. I myself enjoy this busier feel. Honestly, otherwise I would be bored. It's really allowed me to keep my interest in the city and relocate back to the area as an adult. If Fort Collins had stayed a quiet town, I wouldn't have moved back. I love the fact now that there is a bigger city feel with events and endless things to do without actually having to live in a big city like Denver, which I am not a city girl. Old Town used to be a hangout for locals only, very quiet and sleepy, but now it's this massive destination, especially in the summer. It's been strange for me to see the change into a tourist destination, but it does make sense considering that it has become one of the microbrew capitals of the US and a major cycling hub and a hotspot for vacationers. The vibe has also shifted from more of a quiet family town to this blend of college town energies, young professionals, families wanting stability, outdoor adventurers, and even retirees who want to focus on their lifestyle over chaos of other areas. So you get quite a mix of people here from all stages of life who come from different things. But the small town vibe I used to know has definitely faded. Whether that's a good or bad thing depends on your perspective. I really enjoy the busier feel of Fort Collins now. I grew up in Fort Collins back when it was a little more sleepy. I miss that small town vibe. I really do appreciate how it's grown and the community it now has and the immersive culture that has taken over the city. It's been really great to see. Definitely one of the biggest changes, but I think for the best. The next thing I've noticed is the traffic and infrastructure. I get asked pretty often from friends who've moved away, has the traffic really gotten that bad? For the locals who remember Fort Collins 15 years ago, it is so different than it used to be. I get comments from clients moving from places like LA, Phoenix, Chicago, that the traffic here really isn't traffic compared to where they're coming from, and commuting still feels easy to them. The bottom line is that, yes, certain areas are definitely more busy. Major roadways like the Harmony Corridor, College Avenue, Timberline are very busy during peak hours. Anywhere near CSU on game day is definitely congested. It can be frustrating to drive around that area. The city has been doing things, adding roundabouts, bike lanes, and transit expansions, road expansions, but the growth has definitely outpaced our infrastructure in most areas. It is very apparent and can be very frustrating, especially during rush hour, things like that, with just getting across town and the amount and volume of cars on the road. We are working on trying to increase our infrastructure and make traffic flow better, but there is definitely a growing pain here for many residents of Fort Collins for the size of the city. However, daily life is still livable. You can get across town in any direction again in 20 to 25 minutes. Get out into any number of our trail systems, probably within 10 minutes, and get to the mountains still within under an hour. By the way, if you are finding this video helpful, do me a favor and hit that like button. It does tell YouTube that this information is actually useful. It helps other people like yourself who are researching Fort Collins find real info instead of just any hype. I appreciate you subscribing and hitting that like button. Let's get back into it. So I think the final question is, should you move here? I think the underlying question there is Fort Collins still worth it with everything that we discussed? But if you are somebody that values the outdoor recreation, a strong community feel, local restaurants and breweries, safe and clean neighborhoods, as well as access to nature without giving up any city comforts, then yes, Fort Collins is absolutely still worth it. There are not many cities that offer all of these amenities. You will pay a premium, experience crowds on occasion, and deal with daily traffic and congestion. This city has definitely grown up. It's more dynamic, more connected, and yes, more expensive. But in my opinion, it is still one of the best places to live in Colorado. So there you have it, the real truth about how Fort Collins has changed. In my opinion, it really has not lost what made it special. If you are thinking about moving here, relocating, renting, or buying, and you want somebody who will help you find the best neighborhood for your lifestyle and knows how to navigate this market, me and my team would love to help. My contact information is in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.